you might have seen the term fougere for fragrances before, and a lot of people don't know what that means. It's a fancy French word, but in reality it's actually very simple. It refers specifically to fragrances that are very herbal, very aromatic, very usually with citrus top notes, spicy or herbal middle notes, and then maybe some oak moss or some musk or wood notes in the base notes. And Fougere fragrances are meant to be fresh, crisp, clean, yet still have this kind of natural approach to things. It's not necessarily too cold, too formal, or just too artificial. Usually they do try to kind of embody natural freshness with herbs and things like that. So there are quite a few examples of Fougere fragrances, and almost all of them are for men. That's because just historically, in general, Fougere fragrances have been marketed towards men. There are, of course, a few feminine exceptions, but for the most part, men's fragrances are aimed towards this fresh herbal nature, while women's fragrances are more towards sweet, floral, and possibly musky sort of choices. So the thing with Fougere fragrances, there are quite a few that kind of exemplify this. They will almost always have a citrus opening note, and that opening note will almost always be bergamot. Some, of course, will incorporate maybe mandarin orange or lemon, but bergamot is pretty much the go-to because it's kind of like a softer version of lemon. It has this, a little bit of tart, fresh, juicy sort of aspect, but then it also has more of a mellowness that lemon or orange doesn't really have. It's a little bit sweet and tart sort of thing. And that right away immediately makes the fragrance fresh and just kind of light. Then usually it goes straight into the middle notes, which are usually very herbal, maybe with some light spices. Not heavy spices necessarily like cloves or cinnamon, more like pink pepper, for example, which is just strong enough to give the fragrance a little bit of twang and zest, but not too much that it's too heavy or it's not fresh anymore. There may also be maybe a few heavy notes. You might come across tonka bean, for instance. That's more of a kind of a natural musk, kind of more of a vegetal musk, but still definitely not as strong as like civet, for instance, which is very pungent. Besides that, there might be some very green notes like patchouli, tea, green tea, even black tea, things like that. Usually more along the natural kind of plant-ish, products. And the middle notes form kind of the body of the fragrance, and then before that, then it goes down into the base notes. And the base notes, they can be pretty strong, but usually not super strong as you would expect in a very musky fragrance. Usually the base notes are maybe mineral musk, maybe white musk, sometimes just regular musk, but you might also find, again, tonka bean might be thrown in there. Wood notes, definitely wood notes. Sandalwood's a popular option, cedar, fir, and you might also come across a few more spice notes, usually not too many. Oak moss is a very, very popular base note because, as it's a moss, it has a nice basiness, it has a nice kind of musk, but it's still light enough to still be fresh. It's still not too heavy, not too much of anything. Very nicely balanced. And the whole thing about Fougere fragrances is that they are very nicely balanced. They move kind of naturally from the top notes to the middle notes to the base notes, and that keeps them fresh, that keeps them appealing, and they're especially good for warm weather and just to wear during the daytime, and some are good for the daytime and the nighttime. For example, I have a few examples here. I would say the best example of a Fougere fragrance is Dylan Blue by Versace, which is super fresh yet intense at the same time. It has, again, bergamot opening, with that popular bergamot note. It also has some aquatic notes. The middle notes have black pepper instead of pink pepper, patchouli, and then the base notes consist of tonka bean, mineral musk, and saffron. So all that creates a fragrance that is light, fresh, and yet strong at the same time without being heavy, without being musky or too much of anything, which is really nice, especially for warm weather. Then another one, which is a bit weaker, Acqua di Gio from Armani. This is full of herbal notes, has a nice citrusy opening, transitions into some herbal notes like rosemary, and then it has some very, very light musk and wood notes at the bottom. And then the last one, which I would argue it's not the best example of a Fougere fragrance, but it still fits, Versace Eros, which has a very fresh mint opening with some lemon and green apple. Then it melts into some tonka bean and geranium flower. Then when it goes into the base notes, you'll have some vanilla, oak moss, and some cedar wood. So the main reason I say it's not, all those notes make it a really good Fougere fragrance, but I would say it's not as Fougere as Dylan Blue, for example, because it does have a very powerful and thick vanilla note. I would say that vanilla note is stronger than any other notes in it, which kind of takes away from the freshness. It could just be me, but I would say it's not as fresh as some of these other ones. Another, probably the most popular example of a Fougere fragrance is Dior Sauvage, which has, of course, the opening citrus notes, then it has some delicious pink pepper in the middle, and then the base notes are, there's some very light, sort of musky notes. And that's a very delicious, and I think it also has Sichuan pepper, which is very unique. But in general, Fougere fragrances are citrusy, a little bit spicy, with some light musk and some wood notes. Overall, very good fragrance option for men. Of course, women can also pull them off as well. And you really can't go wrong with that type of fragrance, especially during the summer, or when you just want to wear something maybe a bit more casual for the daytime. The main thing with them is that sometimes they're not very long lasting. Dylan Blue is the exception, and Dior Sauvage, because they're both pretty strong. But some options like Acqua di Gio, not too long lasting, but if you experiment with a few different fragrances, you'll eventually find one that works. So other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say about Fougere fragrances. If you have any opinions about them, you can leave those down in the comment section below. If you liked the video, leave a like, maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.